The first sign wasn't the lipstick on the wine glass or the missing lingerie. Those were too cliché for a woman as meticulous as Claire. It was the $3,000 transfer from our joint account to a PayPal with a username that sounded like a rejected OnlyFans handle, sungod_89. Not suspicious on its own, except that Claire still made me split the grocery bill with her down to the last damn cent. And now someone named after a mythical porn star was cashing in from our shared savings. The real kicker? When I casually asked her about it over dinner, she looked me dead in the eye, chewing her steak rare like a Wall Street psychopath, and said it was for business coaching. Business coaching. From sungod_89. She was always careful, I'll give her that. Claire was the kind of woman who never let you see the strings she was pulling until the marionette was already dancing. But that night, something felt warped. I'd come home earlier than usual, thanks to a canceled meeting, and found her laptop open on the kitchen island. That never happened. Claire didn't leave her tech out, not unless she wanted me to see something. So I looked. Not at the browser history, that would have been too obvious, but at the spreadsheet that was still open. Joint future, August planning. Sounds sweet, right? Until you realize that this future didn't include me at all. The spreadsheet had two columns, me and him. No names, just initials, hers and someone else's. And under him, a breakdown of expenses I'd apparently funded. Flights to Lisbon, deposit, property, weekend retreat, and the most insulting line of all, investment from M confirmed. M was me. Michael. Her loyal, predictable, financially generous husband. I didn't react. That's the thing with real betrayal. You don't scream. You don't flip tables. You don't start sobbing into your hands. You study it. Like a surgeon inspecting a malignant tumor before the first cut. Claire was using me to finance her fairy tale with another man. But worse than the betrayal was the sheer clinical precision of it. I wasn't just being cheated on emotionally. I was being harvested financially, like an organ donor who wasn't informed he was bleeding out. And as I watched her get ready for her women's networking dinner that night, I noticed something off. She sprayed perfume her usual, but not on her wrists or neck. She sprayed it on her thighs. Who the hell perfumes their thighs for a networking dinner? That was the first crack. The smell of sweet manipulation lingered in the hallway as she walked out the door in heels too high for professional mingling. I sat down, opened my own laptop, and started tracing bank transfers. I wasn't just going to find the truth. I was going to make sure the man she was running to saw her for what she truly was, a parasite dressed in a pantsuit. I wasn't going to scream or beg or confront. No. I was going to make them both realize, in their own separate moments, that the ground they thought was solid was nothing more than paper I'd start lighting on fire one transaction at a time. The best part? She left behind her wireless earbuds. Not significant, except they were synced to her phone, and her phone was synced to her home Wi-Fi. I sat down with a bottle of whiskey I hadn't touched in 3 years and listened. Listened to her voice messages. Her moans. Her pathetic little coos. And his responses. The guy sounded like he read Nietzsche in the mirror and called it spiritual growth. Every message was laced with delusion. Soon we'll be free, he said. He's just a stepping stone, baby, she replied. And I smiled. Because stepping stones don't just get walked on. Sometimes they crack. Sometimes they shift underfoot. Sometimes they drag you into the river when you least expect it. I didn't confront her that night. I kissed her on the forehead, asked how the dinner went, and even offered to give her a back rub. She smiled, a little too smug, a little too safe. And as she undressed, I saw something even better than the spreadsheet. She was wearing new lingerie. Red, expensive, and absolutely not meant for me. I'd seen the invoice for it in our shared email account. She forgot to delete it. One of those recurring monthly gifts she'd been charging to a credit card I paid off each month like a good husband. She slipped into bed and turned her back to me. I didn't touch her. I stared at the ceiling and smiled, because now I knew. Knew who I was dealing with. Knew what kind of revenge she deserved. And knew exactly how to make her lover realize he wasn't her escape, he was her next victim. The shift didn't come like a wave, it came like a slow leak in a quiet room. The kind that takes days to notice until you're suddenly ankle-deep in water and wondering how the hell it got so high. Claire and I had always been solid, at least, I thought we were. Sunday mornings were our ritual, black coffee, scrambled eggs, and her barefoot on the patio, wrapped in my flannel shirt and reading from her book club's latest obsession. I'd bring her a refill without asking. She'd kiss my cheek without thinking. That was our rhythm. Then, slowly, the rhythm changed. Not violently, Not with slamming doors or screaming matches, just a subtle reprogramming, like a familiar melody being played in a minor key. She started sleeping with her back to me more often, muttering about needing more personal space. I blamed it on stress. Her job was demanding, her manager was a nightmare, and I was doing my best to support her through it all. When she asked for more time alone in the evenings, I agreed. She claimed she needed to journal, to reflect, to listen to her inner voice. I nodded, told her to take whatever time she needed. That's what love looks like, right? But then the journaling turned into late-night walks. At first she invited me, but when I said yes, she'd suddenly have cramps or change her mind. Then she stopped asking altogether. One night, I watched from the upstairs window as she stood on the street corner, pretending to text before a car, definitely not a rideshare, pulled up and she got in. She told me she went to a 24-hour bookstore. We don't have any in this town. I didn't say anything, just kissed her goodnight and wondered who she was kissing in return. Her wardrobe began to change, subtly at first. She'd always had great taste, but suddenly her clothes were sharper, sexier, more curated. Things she never wore around me. She started saying odd things, like how marriage was a social construct, how people shouldn't feel entitled to each other's time, and how love had to evolve or die. She never said those things before. Her favorite phrases became, "Don't take this personally," and "You need to respect my process." And I did. I really tried to. But it was hard not to take it personally when she deleted our couple photos from Instagram, turned her account private, and told me she was curating her digital footprint. I didn't even know what that meant. We used to cook together. She used to beg me to make my lemon pepper chicken. Then she went vegan without warning and started telling me meat was a trauma response. I laughed, thinking she was joking, but her eyes didn't move. She wasn't joking. She'd been reading new books, following new influencers, getting coaching from some guru who posted shirtless videos about divine masculine energy. She started making vision boards and said I wasn't aligned with her vibrational path. I didn't even know what the hell that meant, but I bought her a new journal anyway. I wanted to support her. I thought this was just a phase, something she'd work through. One night, I found a receipt in the trash for a massage. Not weird on its own, except it was for a men's wellness spa. When I asked about it, she blinked twice, smiled too wide, and said, "Oh, that was a birthday gift for my coworker." Her coworker was a 60-year-old woman named Janet. But again, I let it slide, because love isn't supposed to be paranoid. Her phone, once left casually on the couch or plugged into the charger in the kitchen, became surgically attached to her hand. She changed her passcode. She turned off previews. She said she was protecting her energy. I told myself it was fine. We all need privacy, right? But then she changed her ringtone to silent. Started showering at odd times, right after coming home from yoga instead of before. And I started finding hairs that weren't hers in the car. A scent in the passenger seat that wasn't perfume, more like sweat and cologne. I opened her glove compartment and found a second toothbrush, a travel-sized deodorant, and a bottle of mints. She said she was just being hygienic. I nodded and said nothing. But inside, something small and sharp was turning over and over. She started smiling more, but not with me. She stopped laughing at my jokes, but laughed at her phone like it was feeding her pure dopamine. Her smile was new, polished, performed, like she'd learned it from someone else. Someone who made her feel seen in ways I apparently couldn't anymore. And yet, she never fought with me, never shouted, never blamed. She just withdrew, like a tide slipping out to sea while you're still building sandcastles. There was peace in the house, but it wasn't ours. It was hers. Like I was living in a rented set of our former life, while she rehearsed for something bigger offstage. I wasn't angry yet. Not fully. There was still a part of me clinging to hope. Still a part of me that thought maybe she was just lost. Maybe she'd come back. But hope has a sound. And in our house, it was becoming quieter every day. It was a Thursday night when everything snapped, quiet and sharp like the crack of a bone beneath skin. No scream, no dramatic reveal, just a tiny shatter you can feel more than hear. Claire had been in one of her new evening resets, lighting candles in the bathroom, her Spotify playlist echoing low through the walls. Ambient sounds mixed with phrases like realign your chakras and let go of what no longer serves you. I stayed on the couch, scrolling mindlessly, pretending not to notice the scent of a cologne I didn't own trailing down the hall when she came out to grab her essential oils. She left her phone behind. She never left her phone behind. That thing was more attached to her body than her own damn spine. It buzzed once, then twice. I don't know why I looked. Maybe I already knew. Maybe I'd known for weeks and just didn't want to look it in the eye. But I did. I picked it up and saw a message from someone saved as Nadia from yoga. First red flag. Claire hated yoga. She called it stretching for people who pretend they're enlightened. I opened it. One tap. And the whole fucking world realigned in a way that felt like vertigo. It wasn't Nadia. It was a man. A man who sent a picture. A mirror selfie from what looked like our guest bathroom, shirtless, with the caption, "Still smell like you." Next round Saturday. I stared at that photo, so long the screen dimmed and shut off on its own. My fingers didn't move. My face didn't twitch. My breath stayed steady, even as my heart folded in on itself like wet paper. I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't confront her. I didn't say a word. I set the phone back exactly where she'd left it, screen down, like I'd never touched it. When she came back, wrapped in a towel and humming something she probably thought made her seem whimsical, I looked at her like I was studying a foreign language. She smiled at me. I smiled back. There was no warmth in mine. I don't even think there was skin left on it. Just teeth. She asked me if I wanted tea. I said sure. She boiled water, oblivious. I sat down at the dining table, hands clasped, eyes fixed on nothing. Not the room. Not her. Just the space between what I knew 5 minutes ago and what I could never unknow now. The photo had told me everything. The lighting in the background was unmistakable. That was our home. He was inside our home. While I was at work. While I was paying the mortgage. While I was fixing the damn sink she'd clogged with her hair. She brought him here. Into our bed. Into our walls. Into the life I built for her from the ground up, like I was laying bricks for another man to fuck her on top of. And she laughed. Right there in front of me. At something on the TV. I watched her mouth curl into a smirk, so familiar it made me nauseous. That smirk used to be mine. It used to come after a private joke, after a lazy Sunday movie night, after a kiss in the kitchen when she thought I wasn't looking. And now it was just borrowed. Given away. Rented to another man like a summer Airbnb with no security deposit. That was the exact moment I realized Claire wasn't just unfaithful. She wasn't just lost or confused. She was gone. And in her place was something else, something cold and calculated, wearing her skin and speaking in her voice. She'd already emotionally left me. I was just the furniture she hadn't moved out yet. I felt something inside me shift. Not anger. Not despair. Something colder. A detachment so clean it felt surgical. I'd spent weeks wondering, doubting, trying to rationalize her behavior. But now, I wasn't wondering anymore. I was watching, waiting, planning. I finished my tea, thanked her, kissed her temple. She didn't notice my lips didn't touch her. I told her I was going to bed early, long day tomorrow. She nodded, barely listening, already scrolling through her phone. Probably deleting the evidence. Too late. It was already in my head. Etched, archived, filed under final proof. I lay in bed that night, eyes open, staring into the darkness, and felt the weight of reality pressed down like lead. Not sadness, not fear, just purpose. She thought I was still in the dark, that I was still the fool financing her little sideshow. But that night, I became something else. Not a victim, not a husband, just a man with a plan. The man she never saw coming. I became invisible in my own home. A silent observer wearing the same smile I'd always worn, nodding in all the right places, agreeing with her newfound philosophies on boundaries and personal energy like I was still that same supportive husband, all while my mind rewired itself into something colder, sharper, unrecognizable even to me. I didn't rage, didn't confront. I simply began to collect. The first move was so subtle it bordered on elegance. I pretended to be sick for 2 days, stayed home while she thought I was at work, and waited. She didn't bring him over, not while I was there, but her phone habits changed instantly. She texted less, made no calls from the living room, always had her back to the hallway. That alone told me she was adjusting to a presence. She sensed a shift, but I kept it level. I played the role. Then I created a new email address and sent a bouquet of flowers to her office, just to celebrate her promotion, a position she claimed to have gotten weeks earlier. But I didn't sign my name. I used a made-up admirer's initials, the kind that might make her pause. The flowers got returned. No one by that name works here, the delivery driver told me when I followed up. So she hadn't been working there at all. That promotion was a lie. I checked her LinkedIn. No update. I checked our shared calendar, still blocked for office hours every weekday. She was lying 5 days a week, and I'd been footing the Uber bills she didn't realize I had linked to my email. Then I set a decoy trap. One Friday evening, I told her I was going out of town for a last-minute conference, left the house with a packed suitcase, and drove 3 blocks away to park at a 24-hour gym. I waited. I watched. 37 minutes after I left, she left too. Dressed casually, gym bag in hand. She didn't go to the gym. She didn't go to yoga. She went straight to a residential apartment complex I didn't recognize, buzzed in without hesitation, and stayed there until 2:14 a.m. I knew because I timed her return. She came back humming, smiling to herself. I was already in the bedroom, pretending to sleep. When she slid into bed next to me, I heard her sigh like she'd just come home from heaven. I wanted to scream, but instead, I memorized the address. The next day, I drove past that building, looped around until I found a parked car that looked familiar, one I'd seen once in a blurry photo in her phone gallery months ago, labeled Work Lunch. It had a bumper sticker with a yoga studio's name she suddenly couldn't stop talking about. I made note of the plate. I ran it through a contact at the DMV who owed me a favor. The name matched a man. 32. No wife. No kids. Recently moved from Phoenix. I scrolled his Instagram from a dummy account, saw his reflection in her sunglasses and a photo she'd taken last weekend on her solo hike. The same forest I'd once proposed to her in. I didn't tell her I knew. I just kept stacking evidence. I checked our bank statements, noticed gas station charges far from her work, repeated 3 times a week. I tracked her mileage. It didn't match her stories. I asked seemingly innocent questions. How was lunch with Karen? What did the manager say about your pitch? Each time she gave an answer, I mirrored her words back days later to test her memory. She tripped more than once, but played it off as stress. I nodded, handed her a glass of wine, told her to relax. Then I traced the email receipts she always deleted but forgot were also stored in the cloud. I found dinner reservations, boutique hotel bookings, and one particularly painful invoice from a local jeweler for a necklace I never saw, paid for in cash. I drove to the jeweler, told them I was shopping for my wife and wanted something like what I'd bought before. The assistant, oblivious, pulled up a photo from their records. It was a gold pendant with his initials engraved on the back. I asked her if she wanted to do dinner that night. She said she was too tired. I ordered sushi for one and watched her text with a grin while she thought I wasn't looking. I wasn't just gathering evidence. I was watching her shape her lies around me like a snake coiling around a sleeping limb, careful not to wake me until it was too late. But I was wide awake. I had every timestamp, every screenshot, every receipt lined up like dominoes. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to accuse. I just needed her to keep lying, to let her believe I was still blind while I planned the moment she'd lose both him and me in the same breath. She thought she had control, thought she was manipulating from above. But I wasn't under her anymore. I was in the walls, in the cracks, watching. And she was already standing on a trap she hadn't even noticed I'd built beneath her. I chose a quiet setting, a place that felt sacred, almost nostalgic, so the contrast would sting. It was the rooftop terrace of the same restaurant where I had once proposed to Claire, back when her eyes still held honesty and her laughter wasn't a performance. I made a reservation for 2 under her name, told her it was a surprise anniversary dinner, and even arranged for the waiter to bring her favorite wine, Malbec, the one she said reminded her of our trip to Mendoza. She arrived dressed for seduction, like she was trying to impress someone she respected, wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. I stood when she approached, kissed her cheek, pulled out her chair. She smiled like she'd won, not knowing the war had already ended 3 nights ago when I walked past a hotel near the edge of town and saw her through the lobby window, wrapped in a man's arms, laughing, her hand resting on his chest like it belonged there. I didn't approach. I simply waited until they went up the elevator, then spoke to the receptionist under a false pretense and confirmed the name on the suite reservation. His. She'd booked it under his name, not hers. Smart, but not smart enough. I waited until she took her first sip of wine before I set the folder on the table between us. A plain black binder, slim and silent. Her eyes narrowed, the way a predator's might when it senses something it can't yet name. "What's this?" she asked, still feigning warmth. "Go ahead. Open it," I said. She flipped through the pages, screenshots, timestamps, hotel invoices, location data, a copy of the jewelry receipt with the pendant photographed against his bare chest from a social post she didn't know I'd seen. Her face didn't break immediately. It cracked in stages. First came the smirk, The trained dismissal. This looks dramatic, she said, already trying to spin. It's not what you think. Classic opening move. I said nothing. Let her fumble through her next defense. He's going through something. I was trying to help. He needed a friend. You know I've always had that caretaker side. I still said nothing. She laughed, short and bitter. Okay, fine. We hooked up. Once. It was a mistake. I was drunk. I was emotional. You've been distant for months, Michael. There it was, the shift. From denial to justification to blame, all within 30 seconds. She leaned forward now, more aggressive, voice a little sharper. Do you have any idea how hard it's been living with a man who barely looks at me anymore? Who treats me like a roommate? You created this distance. I finally spoke, voice low and surgical. The man in that hotel room. He knew you were married, didn't he? Her jaw tightened. That doesn't matter. Did he know? I repeated. She stared at me, then nodded. Yes, but it wasn't like I held up a hand. Then he deserves to see this too. Her lips parted. Her confidence wavered. You wouldn't. I didn't smile. He deserves the full picture. Not the script you fed him about the cold, inattentive husband who doesn't understand you. He deserves to know you cried in my arms after you slept with him, that you let me cook you breakfast and kiss your forehead while planning your next lie. She looked around the terrace, suddenly aware of the other diners. She reached for my hand, lowered her voice. Michael, please. This isn't the place. No, Claire, I said calmly. This is exactly the place. The truth should be heard in the light. Her face changed again. The pleading eyes evaporated. What replaced them was venom wrapped in elegance. You're pathetic, she hissed. You always needed control. That's why I left emotionally, because you never made me feel free. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, my voice steady. No, Claire. You left because you thought I was too stupid to notice you slipping away. You wanted freedom, but only on your terms. You wanted to be worshipped without having to earn it. She blinked fast, eyes darting, looking for a foothold. You're doing this to humiliate me. I tilted my head. No. If I wanted to humiliate you, I would have invited your parents here instead of you. Or sent this to your HR department, considering the man you're sleeping with was listed as a vendor on one of your expense reports. Her mouth opened slightly. No words came out. The waiter returned to refill her glass, paused at the tension, then wisely retreated. I sat back, folding my arms, never raising my voice. I didn't come here to fight. I came here to give you one chance to tell the truth, face to face, before everything unravels. Because the unraveling is already happening. You just haven't noticed the threads missing yet. Her hands were trembling now. The defiance slipped into panic. What do you want from me? She asked. I didn't answer. I let the question hang in the air, thick and sharp as a blade. We sat in silence, the city lights flickering below us, two actors at the end of a play neither of us had the courage to rewrite. And I wasn't leaving yet. I wanted her to sit with it, stew in it, let the weight of her unraveling world settle fully onto her shoulders before I delivered the final move. She started slow, like a cornered animal testing which direction might still be open, eyes flicking from mine to the folder, then to the wine glass, then back to me. Calculating, as if she could somehow still spin this, still claw her way out with the right combination of words. You don't understand, she said, tone suddenly soft again, desperate. You've never understood me. I've felt alone for years, Michael. I didn't respond. I just blinked once, the way you might when a stranger on the street tries to sell you a story that doesn't even make sense anymore. Her voice sharpened. Don't sit there like some martyr. You're not innocent. You smothered me. You planned every minute of our lives like it was some goddamn military schedule. I was suffocating. I raised my eyebrows, just slightly, but not too suffocated to sleep with someone else in the house I paid for. She slammed her hand down on the table, the silverware rattling against the plates. You want to feel powerful now? Is that it? Because you've never been a real man, Michael. You were just safe, predictable, a stepping stone. He made me feel alive. I tilted my head, studying her like a scientist watching a lab rat chew its own foot off. That's what you told him too, right? That I was cold, unloving, a burden, something you had to endure. She flinched. That one hit. Not because it was loud, but because it was true and she knew it. She tried to regain ground, her voice turning theatrical, layering on false vulnerability like makeup smeared too thick. You think I wanted it to be like this? I tried, Michael. I gave you chances. You were always so distant, so focused on control. I needed to feel loved, needed to feel wanted. Is that really a crime? I leaned forward slightly, hands folded, voice like polished glass. No, Claire. But using someone's loyalty as a financial springboard into another man's bed is. Her breath hitched. That wasn't the kind of line she could cry through. So she changed again. You're enjoying this, aren't you? This little performance. You've always had a cruel side. You just hit it better than I did. I gave a slow nod. No, Claire. I'm just giving you what you've never given anyone, honesty. Her mask cracked again. The real her was bleeding through now, wild-eyed and cornered. You're pathetic, she spat. What kind of man lets this happen under his nose and doesn't even notice until it's too late? I shrugged. The kind of man who was busy working 3 jobs to keep us afloat while you played soul searcher with someone who can barely spell commitment. Her jaw tightened. She tried to find another target, another weapon. You know what your problem is? You're emotionally dead. A robot. You never made me feel like a woman. I smiled. Just a little. And yet, somehow, you still let me pay for every dinner, every trip, every massage you booked before sneaking off to him. Her hand went to her mouth, but not to cry. She was trying to hide how red her face had gotten. Not from shame, she didn't have any left, but from the burning humiliation of losing control. For years she'd crafted this image of herself as a powerful woman evolving past her man, blossoming into some higher state of independence and self-worth. But now that I'd stopped playing the part of her silent financier and emotional doormat, she had nothing to stand on but lies and gaslight. You're not even listening, she said, her voice breaking slightly now. You're just trying to punish me. You want me to beg? Is that what this is? I leaned back, looked her in the eyes with the calm indifference of a man who's already buried the corpse of his love and was just waiting for the dirt to settle. Claire, I don't want anything from you anymore. That's the part you can't handle. And that was when I saw it, real fear. Not because I'd shouted or threatened, but because I'm in it. I wasn't fighting to get her back. I wasn't hoping she'd apologize. I wasn't angry or heartbroken or trying to prove a point. I was done. And there's nothing more terrifying to a manipulator than realizing they have no more levers to pull. She looked at me like I was a stranger now, like she couldn't read my face anymore, and she couldn't, because the man she'd learned to manipulate was gone. She raised her voice again, trying one last tactic, weaponizing guilt with surgical desperation. You're going to throw everything away? After all the years? Just like that. I stood slowly, buttoned my jacket, and looked down at her like the wreckage of a storm I once survived. Claire, you threw it away the first time you looked him in the eye and lied about who I was. I'm just taking out the trash. Then I walked to the railing, overlooking the city below, leaving her sitting there in silence, surrounded by candlelight and the pieces of a life she thought she was in control of. The realization settling in that she had finally lost the one thing she never thought she would, my attention. I didn't launch into revenge the next day or even the next week. That would have been too impulsive, too emotional. And I was long past giving her the satisfaction of thinking she'd gotten a rise out of me. I waited, observed, calculated. I let her continue the performance, the cold affection, the fake little laughs during breakfast, the meaningless sex offered like a bandage over a gunshot wound. All of it. I made her believe she still had control while I quietly constructed her collapse from the ground up, one deliberate step at a time. The first phase was evidence consolidation. I duplicated everything. Text logs, call records, emails, shared calendars, cloud backups she forgot were synced to my desktop, hotel invoices, bank transactions, Uber history, security camera screenshots of her entering and exiting the apartment she didn't think I knew about. I stored it all in a hidden, encrypted drive, but also had a copy uploaded to a private server overseas, just in case she got clever and tried to destroy anything. The second phase was financial. Over 3 days, I slowly severed her access to every shared account, starting with the investment portfolio she never understood but always bragged about helping manage. I liquidated the assets, rerouted the funds into new personal accounts she couldn't trace, and closed the old ones under the pretense of streamlining our finances. I watched her try to pay for groceries one night, fumbling when her card was declined. Bank glitch, I told her, smiling. Should be fixed tomorrow. I canceled her credit cards, changed the logins to our mortgage, car insurance, utilities, and rerouted the bills under my name alone. Everything essential, I kept. Everything she used, I erased. The next move was surgical, her job. I knew she was sleeping with a vendor whose name had appeared too many times on her expense reports, conveniently tied to strategy meetings and wellness events. I compiled the overlap, included dates, locations, and a few redacted photos, just enough to raise questions, and sent it anonymously to her company's compliance department with a short message. Employee may be engaged in undisclosed personal relations with contracted vendor. Please review financial conflicts of interest. I didn't need to explain more. HR departments know how to do the rest. While the fuse burned there, I moved to her social circle. Claire had always cultivated a carefully curated image of the empowered woman, the perfect wife, the career badass. So I rewrote her biography using nothing but her own actions. I sent a group email to her parents, her closest friends, even her old mentor from grad school. No accusations. Just a PDF titled Context, which contained screenshots, quotes, and receipts, organized by date. I didn't add commentary. I didn't need to. The truth, laid bare in chronological order, was more damning than anything I could have said. Within hours, I watched her phone light up with calls she didn't answer. Her mother showed up the next morning unannounced. They fought behind the closed door of the guest room for 45 minutes. I sat in the kitchen sipping coffee, listening calmly. Then came the legal piece. I'd already contacted a divorce attorney weeks earlier, quietly, discreetly. A brutal strategist with the ethics of a machine and the loyalty of a wolf. He helped me set up every paper trail I needed. Proof of infidelity, financial abuse, misuse of marital assets, all of it. He filed for divorce the morning after I dropped the HR grenade, with motions to reclaim my share of everything and counterclaims that would leave her scraping the bottom of a rusted-out checking account. I even included a petition for exclusive rights to the house, citing the emotional trauma associated with her bringing her lover into our marital home. The best part? She didn't even see the filing until the process server handed it to her outside a brunch spot while she was laughing with her friends. And then came the final act, the lover. She'd been stringing him along, feeding him the narrative of the repressed, unloved wife chained to a controlling husband. I broke that illusion in one move. I scheduled a delivery to his apartment. Not a bombshell package, just a small box with a simple note inside. This is who you're planning a life with. Attached was a flash drive. On it, I'd compiled a montage of audio clips from our house. Her cooing about him to her girlfriends while in bed with me. Her laughing at his gullibility. Even one voicemail where she bragged about how easy it was to get him to pay for a weekend trip she then refunded through our joint account. By the time he called her, screaming, I was already out the door. She still thought she had time. Still thought there would be a last chance to twist the story, to pull me back into orbit with some combination of tears and threats. But by then, I was no longer reachable. The accounts were gone. The lawyer was in motion. Her career was bleeding. Her reputation was imploding. And the man she thought was her next chapter had slammed the door in her face. All I did was pull the levers she installed herself. She built the machine. I just made it run. It happened on a Saturday afternoon, bright sun, perfect sky, the kind of day that usually promises celebration, not annihilation. Claire had begged me to come to her company's networking gala, trying to save face, trying to prove to the world that things were still stable, that her life wasn't unraveling beneath the silk of her new dress. I said yes, not because I cared about the event, but because I wanted to be there, right there, when the walls came crashing down. The venue was a rooftop ballroom, glass and marble, full of artificial smiles and polished handshakes, and Claire walked in like she still believed in her own illusion. Her dress was tight, her makeup flawless, her laugh rehearsed. But I could already feel the tremors around us, subtle glances, conversations that paused as we passed, a flicker of recognition in someone's eyes. She didn't notice. Not yet. She was too busy playing hostess, dragging me around by the arm like a showpiece husband. This is Michael, she told one of the firm's partners. My rock. The man didn't shake my hand. He looked at her like she was already bleeding, then turned and walked away. Claire blinked, confused, a crack forming at the edge of her expression. It widened at the drinks table, when her closest colleague, one she used to call her ride or die, saw her, shook his head once, and muttered something under his breath before walking off without a word. Claire's smile faltered then. She turned to me, voice a little higher than normal. Weird energy, huh? I said nothing, just watched. And she saw it. That I wasn't surprised. that I wasn't confused, that I knew something she didn't want to admit. Her grip on my arm tightened. "Did you?" she started to say, but then a voice from behind us cut her off. "Claire." It was him, her lover, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit, eyes darting like a man trying to find the exits. She turned around too fast, her voice shrill. "Hey, you made it." But he didn't smile. He held out a small envelope and dropped it into her hands. "You should have told me the truth," he said, loud enough for the cluster of executives near the appetizers to hear. "About everything." Then he turned and walked away. She opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were copies of the audio clips I'd given him, the ones of her mocking him, using him, laughing at how easy it was to manipulate him. Her face drained as she read the small note I'd written and tucked inside. "He knows who you are now. They all will." She looked up, and that's when she saw the screen. A giant display set up behind the podium, looping a slideshow of company achievements, had just begun cycling through its last, unscheduled segment. It was her. Her texts, her photos, her messages to him while she was in her bed. Proof of her lies, her manipulations, her betrayals. Subtle, not vulgar, no nudity, no slurs, just the truth, cold and clinical. No one gasped. No one screamed. But the room went quiet. All movement slowed. It was the silence of a crowd watching something sacred die. Claire spun toward me, face crumbling. "What did you do?" she whispered, voice cracking, high and uneven. "You're ruining me." I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just looked at her. And that broke her more than any words could have. She reached for me like she used to when she wanted reassurance. But her hand stopped midway, unsure, trembling. "You don't have to do this. We can fix it. You don't. This isn't you." She tried to laugh then, tried to brush it off, to act like it was a misunderstanding, like it wasn't all falling apart in real time. "Someone's playing a sick joke," she said, her voice too loud now, desperate. "You all know me. This isn't real. It's not what it looks like." But no one moved. No one came to her defense. Her boss turned away. A junior associate who once idolized her stepped back. Her old mentor shook her head in silent disappointment and left her glass untouched on the nearest table. Claire turned back to me, mascara beginning to run, smile twitching at the corners. "Michael, please. You love me. You always said you'd never give up on me." I stayed still, calm, watching her collapse like a cathedral set on fire from within. "Say something," she begged. "Yell at me. Hate me. Just don't look at me like that." But I kept looking, cold, unblinking. And that was what destroyed her. Not the evidence. Not the public shame. Not the career that would implode by Monday. But the realization that I was no longer hers. That she was truly alone now. That everything she built, every lie, every manipulation, every false narrative, had come full circle. She fell into a chair, breathing hard, one hand covering her mouth as the tears began to fall. The music didn't start again. The conversations didn't resume. The silence lingered like smoke. And I stood there, still and steady, while the woman who thought she'd never pay the price for betrayal finally realized the bill was due. And I was the one who brought the check. The room had just begun to breathe again when her voice shattered the silence, sharp, shrill, and shaking with rage that could only come from someone watching their carefully constructed world implode. "You think this makes you powerful?" she screamed across the room, her voice cutting through the low hum of whispers and camera phones now aimed in our direction. Her parents turned from the exit, her mother pale with shame, her father frozen with something that looked like disgust. My brother, standing by the wall, didn't blink. "You think ruining me makes you a man?" she shouted again, stepping forward, pointing at me like the truth was a weapon she still believed she could twist. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. "You've humiliated me," she roared, her voice cracking. "You planned this. You stalked me. You obsessed over me. You're sick." Her old friend Jenna tried to pull her back, whispering, "Claire, please stop," but she jerked away. "No. He needs to hear this. All of you need to hear this." She spun around to face the crowd, mascara streaked down her cheeks, her chest rising in shallow bursts. He was never enough. Never passionate. Never spontaneous. Just a walking paycheck in a pressed shirt. He suffocated me. He controlled everything. I couldn't breathe in that house. I stepped forward then, just once, and the room fell quiet again. "You couldn't breathe?" I said, voice low but sharp. "Is that what you tell yourself when you're wrapping your arms around someone else in a hotel room I paid for?" A few gasps rippled through the room. Her jaw clenched, and she shot back instantly. Because he listened to me. Because he made me feel something you never did. I turned, looking at her parents. You hear that? I said, calmly. That's your daughter, justifying betraying her vows because her side project whispered a few sweet nothings while she bled me dry behind my back. Her mother closed her eyes. Her father said nothing. Claire spun back to me, laughing without joy. You want to paint yourself as the victim? You think you're some kind of hero for airing our dirty laundry in front of everyone? She stepped closer, her voice now trembling more from desperation than anger. You think this makes you better than me? I leaned in slightly. No, Claire. What makes me better than you is that I didn't lie. I didn't cheat. I didn't use the person who loved me as a stepping stone to my next ego trip. She slapped me then, not hard, not unexpected, just desperate. A last-ditch swing from someone already drowning. One of her coworkers gasped. My brother stepped forward, but I held up a hand. I looked her in the eyes. You've hit lower than that before, Claire. I just never showed the bruises. She stepped back, breath caught in her throat, tears welling, not the kind meant to manipulate anymore. These were real. She was unraveling. You ruined everything, she whispered, hands shaking. No, I said clearly, for everyone to hear. You ruined everything the moment you decided your self-worth was more important than your integrity. You wanted more? You should have had the courage to leave, not crawl into someone else's bed and lie about it. Someone behind her murmured, Jesus. Claire looked around then, really looked, and saw the faces. The pity, the judgment, the cold retreat of people who once saw her as untouchable. Her lover stood by the entrance, frozen, phone in hand, as if he couldn't believe the real version of her he was watching now. She tried to reach for him. Please, she whimpered. Say something. But he turned and walked out without a word. Her knees buckled slightly, and Jenna rushed to hold her up, but she pushed her away, furious again. You all think I'm the monster. You don't know what it was like to be invisible, to have dreams and no space to chase them. He kept me in a cage. I raised my voice once, just once, and the sound of it stopped every whisper cold. I built you a home. I gave you love. I supported your ambitions, your late nights, your fake yoga classes, your so-called solo retreats. I carried the weight while you rehearsed victimhood. And when you got bored, you didn't walk. You deceived, manipulated, and stole. Don't ever pretend that makes you brave. It makes you weak. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. The words caught like glass in her throat. She sank slowly into a nearby chair, trembling, surrounded by everything she thought would protect her status, image, people, but no one stepped in. No one spoke for her. Her parents quietly walked out. Jenna followed, wiping her own eyes. My brother nodded at me once. I turned away, buttoned my jacket, and walked slowly through the crowd. She looked up at me one last time, eyes red, voice barely audible. Michael, don't leave me like this. I paused. Not for her, but for the moment, so she'd remember that silence forever. Then I leaned in and whispered just loud enough for her to hear. I'm not leaving you, Claire. You already left yourself. And then I walked out dignified, composed, while the room behind me crumbled around the woman who thought she'd never fall. It took less than 2 weeks for her world to crumble into dust. The HR investigation at her firm moved quickly, too quickly for her to clean up the mess, because everything they needed had already been handed to them in a perfectly organized timeline, with receipts. Her affair with the contracted vendor was deemed a breach of ethics, her misuse of company funds sealed the coffin, and she was escorted out of the building by security with a banker's box and no severance. Her LinkedIn went silent. Her Instagram, once a curated gallery of filtered smiles and faux inspiration, turned private, then disappeared altogether. Mutual friends stopped responding to her messages, and the few who initially tried to defend her quietly distanced themselves when the full extent of the truth circulated like wildfire. Even her oldest friend Jenna blocked her number after seeing the messages Claire had sent behind her back, mocking her weight and using her as an alibi more times than anyone could count. Her parents? Done. Her father, a man of few words, told her during their final conversation, "You weren't raised to become this." Her mother refused to speak at all. The man she'd risked everything for, the spiritual partner she believed would help her transcend, ghosted her the moment her scandal hit his doorstep. He changed his number, deleted his socials, and moved out of the apartment Claire used to sneak into like a teenager with a secret. Without income, she downsized to a 2-room rental on the edge of a neighboring city, where no one knew her name, working the front desk at a wellness clinic that didn't care about resumes, only that she smiled at walk-ins. But she didn't smile much anymore. I know, because I saw her once, by accident, walking out of a grocery store with a single bag of basics, head down, hair tied in a lifeless bun, wearing the same coat she once said made her feel powerful. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and pretended not to. But that night, the silence was broken with a message I'd been expecting. I still love you. I didn't realize what I had until I lost it. I hate who I became. Please. Just please. I didn't answer. I waited. And then, a week later, she came to my door. No makeup, no act, just a broken echo of the woman she once pretended to be. She didn't knock, just stood there until I opened it. Her voice cracked before the first word. Michael. I don't know who I am anymore. I studied her face. Not with anger. Not even sadness. Just the same kind of detached curiosity you give a stranger who somehow remembers your name when you don't remember theirs. I don't want anything from you, she said quickly, eyes already filling. I just needed you to know I was wrong. About everything. I would undo it if I could. She reached out, like muscle memory, like she thought my forgiveness might still be within arm's reach. I miss you. Every day. I looked at her hand, then her face, and something inside me felt completely, irreversibly still. You don't miss me, I said quietly. You miss who you could have been with me. That version of you died the moment you chose yourself over everything we built. Her eyes broke. Her knees buckled. And I didn't catch her. She sobbed there on the doorstep, gasping out pieces of apologies too fractured to mean anything. I let her cry. Let her feel the full weight of silence, the same silence she used to weaponize against me during her slow withdrawal from our life. And when she finally looked up, I gave her the one thing she hadn't counted on, clarity. I loved you so much I would have bled for you. You used that love to carve out your own escape plan. And now you're asking me to rebuild the house you set on fire. Her lips trembled. Michael, I stepped back and closed the door without another word. Because I wasn't hers anymore. I never would be again. And when she sat out there on the porch, shaking and alone, I knew the truth had finally caught up. She didn't lose me in the end, she threw me away. The final message I sent, later that night, read, strange. I don't even remember your name anymore. Thank you for listening to my story. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you from, and did you enjoy this? Let's talk.